Disclaimer: before we dive into this chilling tale, please remember that this story is a work of fiction, created for your entertainment. While it may feel real, any similarities to actual events are purely coincidental. Viewer discretion is advised. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride, if you dare. Have you ever had one of those nights where everything feels totally fine, normal even, until it suddenly isn't? Like, you're going about your life, not a single red flag in sight, and then out of nowhere, your whole world tilts. That's what happened to me a few years ago. This story still feels fresh, even though it's been years. I haven't told many people about it because honestly, it still messes with my head. But maybe sharing it will help someone out there. So, let me take you back to that night. The night I realized how quickly life can change. It was a Friday, and I was out with some friends at this bar downtown. You know, one of those cozy spots where the music isn't too loud, the drinks are decent, and you can actually talk without yelling. We were catching up, laughing, and just enjoying the end of a long week. Around midnight, I decided to call it a night. I'm not really a night owl, and I had work the next day. My friends teased me a bit, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get home, crawl into bed, and maybe binge-watch something before crashing. Now, I didn't have a car back then, so rideshare apps were my go-to. I opened the app, put in my address, and within a couple of minutes, a car showed up. It was a black sedan, just like the app said. The driver's name was Mark, and he waved at me when he pulled up. Everything matched, so I got in without even thinking twice. At first, it felt like any other ride. The driver was quiet, which I didn't mind. I'm not one of those people who needs to chat with strangers, especially late at night. He asked me how my night was, and I gave him the usual, "It was good, just tired." He nodded and didn't say much else. But then, about 5 minutes in, I noticed something weird. He took a turn that wasn't on the route the app was showing. I glanced down at my phone, and the GPS had a completely different direction mapped out. I pointed it out to him, saying, "Hey, I think you were supposed to go straight back there." He didn't seem bothered. He just said, "Oh, this way's faster. Trust me, I know the area." I tried to brush it off. I mean, maybe he did know a shortcut. People who drive for a living tend to have their own routes, right? But then he turned onto a side street, a dark, empty one with barely any streetlights. That's when my gut started screaming at me. Here's the thing. I've always been a firm believer in listening to your instincts. But in that moment, I second-guessed myself. I told myself I was overreacting, that this was just a shortcut. But the farther we drove, the less convinced I was. I decided to test the waters a bit. I asked, "So, where are we headed now?" "This doesn't look familiar." He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his tone was clipped, almost annoyed. "Don't worry about it," he said. Now, I don't know about you, but hearing someone say, "Don't worry about it," when you're already on edge, that's not comforting. At all. I started paying closer attention to him. His hands were gripping the wheel tightly, and he wasn't making any effort to put me at ease. The vibe in the car shifted. It went from neutral to tense. Then he started asking me questions, and not the small talk kind. He asked, "Do you live alone?" And, "Is anyone waiting for you at home?" I felt my stomach drop. I knew I couldn't let him think I was an easy target. So I lied. I laughed a little, trying to sound casual, and said, "Oh, my boyfriend's waiting for me. I just texted him that I'll be home soon." That wasn't true. I lived alone. But I hoped it would make him think twice about trying anything. He didn't say anything after that. He just kept driving, and I kept glancing at my phone, trying to figure out where we were. The GPS was useless at this point. We were in an area I didn't recognize, with no major landmarks or signs. At this point, I knew I had to do something. My heart was pounding, but I tried to stay calm. I casually said, "Hey, I think there's been a mix-up. I'm going to cancel the ride and rebook it." I hoped that would prompt him to stop and let me out. But he didn't stop. He didn't even acknowledge what I said. He just kept driving, his eyes fixed on the road. That's when the panic really set in. My hands were shaking, but I didn't want to show it. I opened my phone and dialed 911. I didn't try to hide it. I wanted him to know I was taking action. "Hi," I said, loud enough for him to hear. "I'm in a rideshare, and the driver's refusing to let me out. Here's my location." The second he heard that, he slammed on the brakes. He didn't say a word, just reached over and unlocked the doors. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my bag, opened the door, and ran. I didn't care where I was. I just needed to get away. I ran until I saw a gas station, one of those 24-hour ones with bright lights and a few people around. Once I got there, I broke down. My hands were still shaking as I called the police again to give them more details. The clerk at the gas station let me stay inside while I waited, and I kept looking over my shoulder, terrified that the driver might come back. When the cops showed up, they took my statement and started looking for him. Here's where things get even more messed up. When they tracked him down, they found out he wasn't even a registered driver for the app. He'd stolen someone else's car and was using it to pose as a rideshare driver, and it gets worse. In the car, they found zip ties, duct tape, and a knife. I don't even want to think about what could have happened if I hadn't trusted my instincts or called 911 when I did. After that night, I changed how I use rideshare apps completely. Now, I double-check everything. The car, the driver's name, the license plate, all of it. I share my ride details with someone I trust, and I never let my guard down. The whole experience was a wake-up call. It reminded me that bad things don't just happen to other people. They can happen to anyone, at any time. So, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's to trust your gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Speak up, take action, and don't worry about being polite. Your safety is more important than someone else's feelings. Even now, years later, I still think about that night. I still wonder how close I came to being another statistic. And while I can't change what happened, I can share my story in the hopes that it helps someone else. So, stay alert, trust your instincts, and always have a plan. You never know when you might need it. Closing thoughts. That's my story. It's terrifying to think how quickly something so normal, like a rideshare home, can turn into a nightmare. But I'm grateful I made it out, and I hope this story helps you stay safe out there. Hey there! If you're enjoying these gripping stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, why not stick around for more? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a twist. We're just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's next.